Your daily dose of sports talk is here. Highlights, interviews, and analysis. From the entertainment capital of the world, SportsWrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed it does, and great to have you with us on this Monday edition of the show. All across the United States of America and Canada, watching us on over 260 affiliates, or if you're watching us worldwide, anywhere, on the SportsWrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. We appreciate you being part of the fun. A lot to do over the next 60 minutes. We will be joined, we got a couple of different SportsWrap spotlights today. We'll do one with Dennis Bernstein of thefourthperiod.com and SiriusXM NHL Radio, get his thoughts on these playoff series, one of which is already over, just as quickly as it began with the Hurricanes doing away with the Flyers in a 4-game sweep. And then we'll also talk to our friend Jerry Bonkowski, who will join us a little later on, does a great job on NASCAR and auto racing with Essentially Sports, recap the latest win for Shane Van Gisbergen on a road course. Shocker! There is that to talk about. The NBA playoffs to get into. The draft lottery was held on Sunday, and the Washington Wizards got the number 1 overall pick. We'll get to that. Some baseball notes as well in odds and ends to finish the show. But we start things out as we always do on this Monday. It's time for the big story. And the big story deserves a colossal sponsor, and that's our friends at Colossus Fantasy. Pick'em games, peer-to-peer fantasy, they got it all. Go and check it out right now. Download the app. When you do, on that first deposit, use my promo code SportsWrap, SportsWrap. Use my promo code SportsWrap. Get yourself a sweet deposit bonus. On a $10 deposit, a $40 bonus. On a $20 deposit, get an $80 bonus. All courtesy of my friends over at Colossus Fantasy. Download the app. Start winning today. All right, we start things out in the big story. Kind of a continuation of something we talked about last week on the show, particularly on Friday, where the news came out late last week about Aaron Rodgers potentially going back to the Steelers, and I had a bit of a monologue on that, a soliloquy, if you will, talking about the fact that the Steelers are unwilling to rip off the Band-Aid and start the rebuild and start sort of preparing their fan base for the fact that, you know what, we may not make the playoffs. It's not like you've won a game since 2017 in the playoffs anyway, so why don't the Steelers just rip off the Band-Aid, start to reshape the organization? I know you have TJ Watt, and it's painful to go and do that, but right now, you're not a championship contender. With or without Aaron Rodgers, you're not a championship contender. Maybe you make the playoffs, lose in the first game again, but the bottom line is you're not a championship contender. I've said the same thing about the Golden State Warriors now for a few years, and you see Steve Kerr on the screen, huddled with Draymond Green and Stephen Curry. And the happiest person in the world today is probably Draymond Green, because the return of Steve Kerr likely means the return of Draymond Green as the team tries to run it back for yet another year. Hey, we got Kristaps Porzingis. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they offload him in the offseason because of the salary that's involved. Hey, we've got Stephen Curry. We got Draymond Green. We'll get Jimmy Butler back. Maybe we can lure Giannis Antetokounmpo. Maybe LeBron will come and play. All these pipe dreams about how the Warriors can try and make one last championship run with Steve Kerr at the helm. It's not going to happen. I told you this 3 years ago. And now here we are 3 years later with the Warriors being a team that makes the play-in tournament. I know they had the year where they lost to the Timberwolves and Curry was injured, but the fact of the matter is this is no longer a championship group. And it's best to be honest with your fan base, much like I argued on Friday about the Steelers. Be honest with your fan base and own up to the fact that we're not a championship group anymore. The dynasty is over. Steve Kerr even talked about it. So why are you signing a 2-year deal to come back and return to an organization and to a team that is not likely to win a championship in the next 2 years? It's a curious move. I know Awful Announcing had some interesting reporting on this, saying that Kerr was offered $7 million a year by ESPN and turned it down. ESPN, for its part, is denying that. Nobody else is really talking. Maybe they're is something that has to do with that. Maybe he wanted more money. Maybe he wanted to be a bigger face of NBA coverage. I don't know. But ultimately, this is a bad day. Not a good day for the Golden State Warriors and their fan base that Steve Kerr's back. Not because he's not a good head coach. It just means you're going to try and run it back again, doing the same old things. Big story number one. Big story number two, the NFL, right as we were getting ready to put the show together today, announced its opening game for Week 1 on Sunday Night Football, the first Sunday night game of the year. It's going to be the Giants and going up against Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, I mean, it's great. Division rivals, a lot of optimism around Harbaugh and the Giants. The Cowboys in this never-ending mode of, hey, maybe this is the year. Be fun to watch, but it is schedule week. You're going to get a lot of this stuff leaking out. The NFL put this out on Monday that the opening Sunday night game for the season will be the Giants and the Cowboys. Thought we'd make sure we gave it a couple of minutes. Look, the Giants are going to be a fascinating watch under Harbaugh. You know, they went and traded away one of their better defensive players in Dexter Lawrence. And you have year 2 of Jackson Dart. Eventually, Cam Scatterbo is back in the mix. Giants did some things and obviously improved themselves via the draft. But Week 1, that's your matchup? Sunday Night Football? All right. I mean, look, I'll sign up for anything Mike Tirico's announcing. So there we go. All right. One last thing over the weekend. The baseball world and our world says goodbye to Bobby Cox, who passed away at the age of 84. A lot of times we talk about the Braves teams that he managed as being a disappointment because they only won that one World Series with arguably one of the greatest pitching staffs, 3 Hall of Famers that we've ever seen. But the fact of the matter is, Bobby Cox was a baseball lifer. One of those guys that embodied what it means to be a baseball lifer. You think of guys like Bobby Cox. You think of guys like Don Zimmer, Joe Torre. Some of these guys that have been around the game essentially their entire life. Bobby Cox was one of those guys. He was certainly good for baseball. He was very good for the Atlanta Braves organization for so many years and a fixture around that organization. Bobby Cox passing away this weekend at the age of 84. We want to extend our best wishes to him, his family, and may his memory be a blessing. This Monday edition of Sports Wrap continues. We'll get into the NBA playoffs. The Knicks are rolling. So are the Thunder. Pistons with some work to do. And obviously the Spurs and T-Wolves. We'll get to all of it next. Welcome back to the show. I've had my say in the big story. Let's talk about the NBA playoffs. Sam Yarnell, fresh off his weekend, hangs out with us on the show. And look, I mean, I could sit here and talk about the Knicks sweeping the Sixers and the historic fashion in which they are marching through the first 2 rounds of this postseason. I could talk about the Pistons and the Cavaliers, or the Thunder, making quick work of the Lakers. But what we really have to talk about is what took place in Minneapolis yesterday with the Timberwolves getting a Game 4 win over the Spurs and evening that series up at 2 games apiece. And the big story was this, at least from that game. It was Victor Wembanyama throwing one of the world's tallest swinging elbows and taking out Naz Reid in the process and getting himself ejected from the game. And look, my take on it is very simple. I don't like it, but they have to toss him in that spot because if any number of guys did that, if you saw it in the regular season, somebody would get tossed for throwing an elbow that way. At the same time, Mitch Johnson is absolutely right. The way he gets bullied and pushed around and knocked around, but he's got to be, he's mad about that and he's going to defend his star. But at the same time, Sam, he's got to show more poise than that in that spot. And this goes back to the maturity conversation that we talk about, not just with him, but with this group as a whole. Outside of De'Aaron Fox and Harrison Barnes, you're not talking about maybe Luke Cornett. You're not talking about a ton of championship experience among the key players on this team. My thing is this. Do not hold him out of Game 5. Do not suspend him for Game 5, because that's the conversation. The league could suspend him for Game 5 based on that. I got news for you. If it's Draymond Green, he's suspended for Game 5. But it's Wemby. I don't think they will.
Yeah, Draymond Green also has like a demonstrated
Yes.
history at that point.
Yes.
We'd be having the repeat offender conversation, yada, yada, yada. Like, the suspension thing is kind of stupid to me, because think for these people who apparently think he should be suspended. Again, I think that's asinine, but think through why this happened to Victor Wembanyama, or why Victor Wembanyama was a part of this. It's because of his absurd height. And sure, maybe he is 20 years old and doesn't know exactly how to deal with his body right now. That's fine. But the only reason that he ended up elbowing Naz Reid in the head is because that's just where Naz Reid's head is, where Victor Wembanyama's elbows are. The conversation to me, Jason, and as it so often does with Victor Wembanyama, right? It goes back to, quite frankly, and I hate to say this, as a since day one Victor Wembanyama guy who thinks that he's a great basketball player, but the main conversation around the kid right now, realistically, his entire career thus far has been the best ability is availability. And quite frankly, he's been unavailable in big moments more than he's been available. And when you have that as the narrative going into this, and then you do something that makes yourself unavailable mid-game, it doesn't help you against the people who are pushing that narrative. It really doesn't. And when you're Victor Wembanyama, you need to be cognizant of that. And quite frankly, when you're the Spurs organization, when you're the head coach talking in the media, you need to be cognizant of that. This is a kid who the main concern his entire career thus far to date has been, can he stay available? Can he stay on the floor? And when that's a question, and then he's taking himself off the floor via his actions on the floor, it's just tough. It's a tough look for one of the young budding superstars of the NBA.
It was fascinating to watch from a maturity standpoint. Like, you could literally read his lips on the bench as Harrison Barnes and him were standing. Well, Harrison Barnes was sitting. Harrison Barnes was standing. Wemby was sitting, which made him about the same height. And, you basically could read Wemby's lips saying, what does that mean? Like, he honestly didn't even fathom or was able to grasp in that moment what had happened, that he had actually been ejected from the game. He almost seemed a bit shell-shocked. I don't know that I agree on the availability stuff. I think it's been more of an issue for him, in past years than it was this year. But take that and put it aside for a second. The other aspect of this game in this series is we are now seeing the real rise in superstardom of Anthony Edwards that I think a lot of us were hoping we would see. The way he has stepped up with 2 banged up knees. I don't know if people realize how banged up those knees are and how much he's giving that team right now at a time where they need it. Keeping in mind, they lost Dante DiVincenzo, who's a big part of this team, in the last round and lost him for the season. He hyperextends the knee. A lot of people are wondering if we'd even see him again in this postseason. Not only are we seeing him, we are seeing the best of Anthony Edwards in this round, Sam.
Yeah, I think there's something that has to be said about both of the games that the Timberwolves won in this series were the games that Victor Wembanyama went out of, right?
It's true.
If the Timberwolves are going to have to rely on Wemby leaving the games that they're winning, I'm not sure they've got a shot in the series, Jason. Mm-hmm. However, they did look like a very good basketball team last night without one of the top 10 players in the world on the floor.
Let's also say this. And I think this is why, if you are handicapping this series, and I don't have the numbers in front of me to what the numbers are to win the series. But if you're handicapping this series, it's still the Spurs. It's still the Spurs. And the reason is this. They could not have played worse in Game 1, and they had a 3 to win the game. They lost their biggest star both literally and figuratively in Game 4, and they still had a chance to win that game with 2 minutes left. So if you're really, getting into the meat and potatoes of this series, and by the way, the Spurs are still minus 460 to win the series, which shows that Vegas clearly agrees with me on this over on FanDuel. Spurs minus 460, Timberwolves plus 360.
Yeah, and realistically, if you're a bettor and you're thinking about betting the Timberwolves in this series, just freaking bet them game to game. They're plus 320 to win the next game on the money line. Like if you really think the Spurs or the Timberwolves have a shot to win this series, you are better off betting them on the money line game to game for the remaining 3 games of this series. You'll come out very much positive if they do win. I don't think they have a shot. I think their only way to win is when Victor Wembanyama doesn't play, and I don't think that's sustainable in the playoffs.
And I'll also say this: I wish I had done that with the Yankees when they did nothing but win for 2 weeks. Just bet them game to game. I would have made a lot of money. Instead, you bet them over the weekend, they get swept by the Brewers. No, that's true. They were never plus money. But you would have won anyway because they won every game. We're coming back. Dennis Bernstein talks hockey. Sam returns later. Welcome back to the show. We go from the NBA to the NHL. And much like the NBA, one series is already a wrap as we get back to our friend Dennis Bernstein of the Fourth Period.com. SiriusXM NHL Radio does a great job. Joins us in the SportsWrap Spotlight today. We have 2 editions of the SportsWrap Spotlight today, one with Dennis and one with our friend Jerry Bonkowski a little later on to talk NASCAR. All right, let's go through these series here, Mr. Bernstein, and let's talk about the best one, because I have been thoroughly entertained, not because I'm based in Las Vegas. It's just been a really interesting back and forth between the Las Vegas Golden Knights and the Anaheim Ducks. So let's get into it. Game 1, it sort of felt like a game Anaheim could win. You have the late non-icing call. And you get a win there for Vegas. And I think if you were Anaheim, you had to be thrilled going back home, tied at 1 after you win game 2, feeling like you could have won both games. They win game, Vegas comes back, does a great job in game 3, and then Anaheim does its thing now. And this series has been, like I said, a lot of fun to watch, tied at 2 games apiece.
Yeah, so Vegas is the grown-up playoff team, right? But Anaheim's dangerous now because they're a young team, but they're gaining proof in real time. Like that response last night after that bad game 3, that's a huge move. And their power play woke up. This is a very, very tough series. I still think Vegas can win it, but Anaheim's got a legit shot to emerge and get to a conference final here based on the 2 wins that they've had. But
I say this, you talk about their power play waking up, and it's great that it did, but some of this is a product of, some shoddy / sloppy play here from Vegas in the fact that they've given them that many power play opportunities.
Yeah, they have to clean up their game, and not hidden, but overshadowed by that big win in game 3. Mark Stone's injury, it's an identity loss for this team. They're a different team without Mark Stone. They don't play as hard, and you saw it last night. They're stopping. You have to clean things up. Yes, they have 2 or 3 at home, but Anaheim proved they can win on the road in the last series against Edmonton and in this series against Vegas. So it's a toss-up series right now.
What a fun atmosphere in Montreal with that team beating the Sabres 6-2. On Sunday after the Sabres, looked pretty good in the first couple of games of this series, Dennis. What kind of chance do you give Montreal here?
Big chance here because the power play became the swing weapon. They finally found a way to get on the power play. Cole Caulfield scoring again. It matters because Buffalo now has to defend their top line. And like Vegas, if Sabres don't clean up the penalties and puck management, this could be a shorter series than a lot of people think. So Montreal has a decided advantage right now. Dopage has been great in net. But Montreal, Montreal has the playoff temperature right now. Buffalo as a team has a higher ceiling. But I think the Sabres are being too emotional. And the Canadians, the last couple of games, have played really connected. So, they have a great shot to emerge from this round, Montreal.
One of the things we've talked about in the Spurs-Timberwolves series is the lack of experience in San Antonio. And, the fact that this group hasn't been to the playoffs. No group from the Sabres has been to the playoffs in such a long time. How much is that experience playing in here?
Look, they look like a team that's learned how to make the playoffs before they learned how to handle the playoffs. Right? Because you saw it in the Boston series. They lost at home, didn't play well at home. Now they're being tested by a team that's better than Boston. So, yeah, I think some of it is they haven't played well. Like, Jay Thompson scored that early goal last night, but his game in game 2 was a disaster. So they need to find their focus. They haven't been the better team in the last 2 games. And now Montreal's the favorite. They're the favorite right now because the execution by Buffalo hasn't been there. They've made too many mistakes. You can make those mistakes in the regular season, Jason, and get away with it because you're talented. You can't do that in the second round of the playoffs.
A lot of us are having fun watching this thing go on in Montreal, and obviously with Buffalo being back in the playoffs for the first time in a zillion years. And hello to our friends watching us in Canada, by the way. But does it really matter who comes out of this series when we watch the way Carolina's played so far in this postseason and what they just did in dismantling Philadelphia, which, by the way, credit to you, you predicted whoever came out of that Philadelphia-Pittsburgh series was going to get undressed by Carolina. Does it matter who comes out of that Sabres-Canadiens series?
You would think, but they're always looking to poke holes in Carolina, right? 113-point team.
They look really good, Dennis.
Undefeated in 2 rounds. But you know what they're saying? Well, look who you beat. Ottawa, Philadelphia, Noah Case was out. You really didn't have much at center. But I'll say this. Right now, I picked Colorado to win the Cup. Right now, the Stanley Cup favorite is Carolina. Not because they have the biggest names, Jason.
Yeah, I saw that.
They have the fewest questions. There's questions about Colorado. You might see it again in Game 4 if they can't defend or they can't focus or they want to turn into chaos. So right now, the most complete team in the playoffs are the Carolina Hurricanes without question.
Yeah, feels that way, and they are a slight favorite right now to win it all over Colorado. All right, you mentioned the Avalanche and the Wild. Wild take down Colorado 5-1. You talk about, poking holes. Go ahead, poke them into Colorado right now after this 5-1 loss.
They have to stabilize defensively. If this becomes a track meet this series, Minnesota has a real shot. They really do. So, look, Colorado has the better players. The better playoff formula, if they can keep the game the way it was in Game 3, Minnesota could win the series. Down 2-0, you would say there's no way any team's going to rise up, beat Colorado 4 out of 5. But when you watch that game unfold in Game 3, if that can be replicated in Game 4, they're going back to Denver even. So, yeah, Minnesota's got a legitimate shot because they got all the firepower, and they're forcing Colorado to play defensively, and they're not great at it. So I think that's the flaw in Colorado. While they had the biggest stars, they had the best roster, right? Are they going to play winning hockey for the next 2.5 rounds?
There's a huge drop-off, and in the last minute here, I want to get your thoughts on this. There's a huge drop-off after Carolina and Colorado when you look at the odds to win the Stanley Cup. Yeah. It's plus 145 on Carolina, plus 175 right now on the Avalanche over on FanDuel. And then it's the Canadiens at 950, Vegas at 1,000. Do you realistically give a shot at anybody? If you're talking about winning the Stanley Cup right now, could you justify putting money on anybody other than Carolina or Colorado?
Only because this team's won before would be Vegas. If Carter Hart's going to be the best goaltender in the series and they can get past Anaheim, could they beat Colorado? Yeah, it's the only team I would trust to put some money on because they've been there before. They've played well under Torts. They find ways to win, and they're a very experienced team. So, Anaheim beat them. They didn't beat themselves last night. Anaheim beat them. So I think the only team I would say right now would be the Vegas Golden Knights. They'll have an outside shot. But, yeah, clearly the top 2 teams are Colorado and Carolina.
Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio. I always appreciate you, my friend. Be well.
Always a pleasure, Jay. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to the show. From hockey back to the NBA we go. The NBA's draft lottery was held on Sunday afternoon in Chicago. Winners, losers. Let's go through them. I have a feeling when we show Sam Yarnell's camera shot, he's going to be smiling. Let me see. There it is. There it is. because this, my friends, is Wizards fan number one, maybe the only one, other than maybe him and Chuck Todd, who are our friend who comes on the show to talk about sports with us from time to time. Wizards get the number one pick in the NBA draft, Sam, and if they were the big winners of the day, the Indiana Pacers had to be the biggest losers of the day. We'll get to them in a moment, but first I wanted to give you an opportunity to bask in the glory that is Wizards basketball, because when have you had a chance to do that in your lifetime? You get a chance to bask in the glory of Wizards basketball as they get the top overall pick in the draft, and they've got every opportunity to screw this thing up and pick the wrong guy out of the 5 stars, because one of them's going to be a bust, and the Wizards may wind up choosing that one, and then we'll all get to kind of laugh at how the Wizards in this amazing draft class figured out a way to screw it up. Have fun.
Yeah, I think the problem with that whole logic is that unlike years past or iterations past of basketball, front offices have finally figured it out to the point where whoever the number one overall pick is that goes to the Wizards is actually going to be walking into a very decent situation that I think will probably at least make the play-in next year. I think they'll probably pretty comfortably make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, right? This is a team that could make some noise next year, depending on how things go throughout the course of the offseason. Listen, a couple of main points from me on it regarding the Wizards. I don't think that they're necessarily locked into the number one overall pick, Jason. I think there's a very real world where Utah really, really wants to keep AJ Dybonsa in state, and they are, as we've seen them in past drafts, they are willing to pay that extra tax to move up one spot and swap with the Wizards. If the Wizards are approached with a deal like that, I don't think that there's a single way that you can say no and let Utah deal with kind of everything you just mentioned in terms of taking the risk that one of these guys is a bust. I also think one of the conversations that I saw on a very small corner of Laker Twitter, weirdly enough, right after this whole situation developed, it feels like there's now a very real chance that LeBron James ends up in the District of Columbia next year. Until yesterday, I kind of thought of it as a pipe dream, but now it actually does feel like there is a real shot that it's between the Wizards and Cavs and maybe the Knicks in terms of where LeBron is deciding to go next year. And Jason, I mean, it just makes the possibilities limitless for what this Washington team can do. They're almost definitely now going to move off of Anthony Davis in this offseason. So you're looking at a starting 5 next year that's going to have a first overall pick and a second overall pick from 2 years ago who just about made the All-Star team this year. It's a good time to be a Wizards fan in Washington, D.C., and it is sure not a good time to be an Indiana Pacers fan. You are right about that.
I'll get to them in a second, but where you're born matters. I always talk about this. You know, if Dylan Harper is drafted to, I don't know, take your craptastic team of choice, Sacramento, maybe we're not seeing the growth and the development and the maturity and the budding star that he's turning into, throughout this season that we've watched in San Antonio with him and the Spurs. Whoever gets drafted, as you said, I think, into this situation, they're not getting to the same old Wizards team. And I think that is one of the most important points that you bring up, is they're not being born into a dysfunctional, chaotic sort of situation where you don't know year to year what you're getting, that there is a plan in place here. So I would tend to agree with you that wherever they go in this draft, that person's going to be set up in a much better position to succeed, which is something we always talk about in this show, is setting players up to succeed. If you're in business, it's setting your employees up to succeed. If it's whatever sport you're in, setting your players up to succeed. I think the Wizards are in a position to do that. I don't think LeBron's landing there. I think I honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if LeBron's back in the same exact place he is next year, because they could pay him the most. And I wouldn't be shocked if he wound up in Golden State with the Warriors, given that whole situation with Steve Kerr coming back and that organization deciding we're not ready to tear it down yet. We're gonna just continue to hemorrhage blood and try to figure out a way to piece this thing together to make another play-in tournament next year.
It's actually interesting that you bring up the Steve Kerr contract extension, which happened super weird late night on Friday. Weird timing, Jason. Put my little tinfoil hat on over the weekend. I've now made it so that I'm almost certain that Steve Kerr signed that contract extension because he had it on what he thought at the time was good authority that the Warriors were going to end up with a much better lottery selection than they did, and he thought they were going to be one of those teams like the Bulls flying up into the top 4, and he was going to be able to make another career for himself off of that player.
The Pacers may be the biggest losers in this draft. They had a 14.5% chance at the top pick. They didn't even get a top 3 pick. They wind up getting the 5th pick, and that means it's not their pick anymore. It belongs to the Clippers, who shoot and score in a big way. Maybe the NBA will just take away that pick and give it back to the Pacers as a result of the aspiration investigation. I think that'd be the best way to go.
I mean, this is one of those moves, Jason, that's going to go down I'm talking about all time in terms of bad moves. It's like you look at the last 3 years in the NBA, it's like the Bradley Beal trade by the Suns and then this. Like those are the two absolutely horrible, unrecoverable trades. Just Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, the number 5 overall pick, a 29 unprotected first, and a future second for Ivica Zubac. That's people are going to get fired. I mean, it's pretty simple. People are going to get fired.
And in a year where you weren't really going to compete because Halliburton wasn't playing anyway. Like, what are we doing here? We're coming back. Welcome back to the show. Every Friday and Monday on SportsWrap, we feature NASCAR because it doesn't get enough love from the national show, so we give it love. Fridays, Tino Patino joins us, and on Mondays, this guy, the one and only Jerry Bonkowski, hangs out with us from Essentially Sports. He does a great job on auto racing over there, and a longtime friend of whatever program it is that I'm hosting. All right. Well, I mean, look, you can set your watch by it. Death, taxes, and Shane Van Gisbergen winning another road course race. This one at Watkins Glen. What's it, his 7th NASCAR Cup Series win, if I'm not mistaken. And this one was, pretty wild because he was obviously the pole sitter for the race. I say obviously, but I mean, he led 74 laps, but it was overcoming a 29-second deficit with just 18 laps to go. How did he do it, Jerry Bonkowski?
He's Shane Van Gisbergen, and that's how he did it. I mean, the thing is, this guy is amazing. I mean, if he can ever get his stuff together for, doing the ovals and winning on the ovals, or even top 5s in the ovals, he'd be the consummate driver out there. I mean, he's 37, I think 38, something like that. But I mean, he just has the road courses down to a science. But you're right that coming back from as far back as he did in 18 laps, I mean, that's got to be some kind of a crazy record. It has to be. And I'm glad to see him win. And ironically enough, that's only his first win of the season. I mean, I thought he would have. We had the Coda race. He didn't win there, but I think he came in second, if I remember right. But yeah, I'd just like to see him get a few more wins this year, and maybe one of those may not even be a road course, maybe an oval.
Well, that's just what is the impetus for him to win on something that isn't a road course? Like, what will change? What will inevitably happen that will allow him? Has there ever been anybody that you could recall that was this sort of one-track minded, in that they really were this good on road courses but couldn't figure it out on the ovals? Like, has there ever been any case study that you could point to and say why Shane Van Gisbergen will eventually win on an oval?
Well, no, there hasn't been that I know of, but I will mention one guy, kind of similar in the sense that he's from the same general area out in the Pacific, the far, whatever you want to call it, the Far East or whatever, Marcus Ambrose. I mean, he won 2 races in Cup. Both of them were at Watkins Glen, and he was more of a road course racer and winner when he was racing out in Australia and New Zealand. Then when he comes to the U.S., he did a good job. Don't get me wrong. A great guy, a great talker, loved interviewing him, but he just could never get that oval win, much like Shane Van Gisbergen. So he's probably the closest guy I can think of. But again, he only had the 2 wins, whereas Shane already has 7. And for both of them, they were all on road course tracks.
I always ask this question: Do guys around the Cup Series, does the one-trick pony aspect of him, does it piss those guys off that, he's going to basically get his way into the playoffs just because he's good at this one particular discipline, being road courses? Does that create animus?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it causes frustration, that's for sure, because, it almost seems like, if you go to Vegas, the guy that's going to have the best odds is going to be, Shane Van Gisbergen. But I think if you look at some of the guys out there, they look at him as a rival, but it kind of ticks them off themselves because they're not as good as him on a road course. So a lot of these guys study him very well. I know a couple of guys already have heard, really study how SVG races. They've watched some of his tapes. What does he do? Where does he find the best places to pass on a road course? Things like that. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, it was about, guys just absolutely hated going to road courses. Kevin Harvick especially was one guy I can think of think in my mind. Matt Kenseth was another guy. They just wanted to get there, get it done, and get the heck out as fast as they could. And, however the chips fell, they fell. But, as the last 20 years have evolved, you've got to become a good road course racer in addition to being a good oval track racer as well, too. So Shane, he's definitely an inspiration to guys to up their game, but at the same time, they still can't figure out how to beat him, though. All
right, give me a thought on the All-Star race and sort of what this means to these guys at this time of the year.
Well, it's always, kind of a pick'em kind of race, the way I look at it. I mean, anybody can win that race. You've got the Open, you've got the which sends some guys crossing over into the main event. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of bragging rights involved. I mean, I'm still going to look at the guys like Kyle Larson or maybe a new guy, Carson Hocevar. I think we talked about him off. I mean, those are the kind of guys that I think you're going to see in the winner's circle. Chase Elliott's another guy. I'd love to see maybe a guy like Brad Keselowski win, although it wouldn't count for him towards the points. But still, it's anybody's game. It's a wide open game, and the track itself is such that it offers them an opportunity to really show what they've got. And, the other thing, too, is the All-Star race is literally half the field of a normal race. So there's a lot of things you can do. You have more open space to pass and race against guys. So there's that, too, as well.
Last thing before we go, 45 seconds. Kyle Larson's still looking for a win this year. You go and look at laps led. I think he's second amongst laps led, but hasn't won a race. How deep is the concern inside the Larson camp right now?
He kind of went off in the media yesterday at Watkins Glen that everybody's stressing about the not having one thing. He's not really overly upset about it because he knows the wins are going to come. He knows that he's going to do very well when the playoff time comes around. So, I think maybe some people are making too much of this thing. Yeah, it's been a year, but look at Kyle Busch. It's been 3.5 years for him. There's other guys like him too. So I wouldn't be too concerned if I'm Kyle Larson, and he already said over the weekend that he's not concerned. So,
Jerry, always appreciate you, my friend. Check out his work over at Essentially Sports on all things auto racing. Thanks, Jerry. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Monday. WNBA season launched on Saturday. Well, Friday night, technically. And then Saturday, they had the great game between Dallas and Indiana. We're not getting to that to today's show because I want to talk WNBA tomorrow with our friend Robin Lundberg, who does a great job on all things women's basketball with SI. That was a banger to start the WNBA season, by the way. We'll get to that tomorrow on the show. Before we get to odds and ends, a couple of reminders. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show Monday through Friday. Crystal clear audio. It is a fantastic companion while you're driving to work, on the treadmill, on a plane, maybe sitting in an airport because your flight's been canceled 7,000 times. Just go back and listen to every show. You can go and do that on the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel is the place to find all things Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the Monday through Friday TV version of the show. 45 minutes of it, waiting there commercial-free. Extended conversations like the one I had with David Ardsma that we talked about at the top of the show, where we got into it on Trevor Bauer. Who knew Trevor Bauer would be watching that and wasn't very happy about it? Boo-hoo. So there's that. We have Sports Wrap shorts that are there. 1 to 3 minute long vertical videos made for the person on the go. News breaks, we talk about it there. Big game happens, we talk about it there. Sports Wrap shorts available on the YouTube channel. Also available on our TikTok, Sports Wrap Jason Page, and on our Instagram, Sports Wrap Jason Page. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, on this Monday, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Tariq Skubal could be back sooner than we think. His agent Scott Boras saying that. Apparently the loose bodies may have been just like one loose body. And the Tigers could have back Tariq Skubal soon enough.
Yeah. And I could wake up tomorrow and go to the bathroom and rainbows could come out too. That's also possible, Jason.
That's a visual I didn't need.
No, you have to read through the tea leaves on this. We are trending towards, this is crazy. This is so Scott Boras. We're trending towards an NFL style holdout here with Tariq Skubal and the Detroit Tigers towards the end of the season. Obviously on the season before, Tariq Skubal is about to be paid more than any pitcher in the history of this gosh darn sport. He has elbow surgery on his throwing elbow. Yeah, no shot he's coming back a day sooner than it was originally reported. I would bet you he's coming back 2 months after it was originally reported, once the Tigers have been eliminated from playoff contention, and he's getting on a plane to go to Cancun and figure out how many millions of dollars he's going to sign for this offseason. We've seen, in my estimation, probably the last of Tariq Skubal in a Tigers uniform, unless they're willing to break the bank and give the man half the franchise, quite frankly, this offseason. I think Boras is getting out ahead of this because he wants the eventual suitors to know that this maybe wasn't as bad as they're going to make it seem based on the amount of time that Tariq Skubal is in fact going to miss. But Jason, I don't expect this guy to get anywhere near even 120 innings this season. Having elbow surgery the year before he is about to make, again, more money than any pitcher in the sport ever has. Yeah, you're not going to risk that if you're anyone associated with the guy.
I don't normally buy into conspiracy theories. The only thing that would give me hope that what you're saying is true, not hope, but give me pause that what you're saying is true, is the way he handled the World Baseball Classic. That's the one thing that kind of sticks out in my mind and says, this guy's just worried about making sure he gets that payday. That's the only thing that kind of, otherwise I'd be like, really? Is it that deep a conspiracy that Scott Boras not? And it is Scott Boras, who has overplayed his hand and screwed things up in the past before. So I that may not be as far-fetched and as crazy as some people might think it is. Odds and ends, Jacob Mizorowski. Nobody beats the Miz. Wow. What a performance against the Yankees, who finally ran into a decent team and got swept this weekend in Milwaukee by the Brewers. That was a 3-game series, right? They got swept by the Brewers, and Mizorowski was amazing on Friday night. 13 pitches over 100 miles an hour, bunch of them at 103. Spencer Jones, welcome to the major leagues. Good luck. You get to face that. He made the Yankees look rather pedestrian when a lot of teams have struggled to do that this year, Sam. Mizorowski, I don't know how this guy ever gives up a hit based on what I saw Friday night.
It was incredible, right? And Jacob Mizorowski, there's all the stats flying around Twitter. It's like, of the 25 hardest pitches thrown this century, which I guess is all time because they didn't track them before that, he's got like 23 of them. It's absolutely insane. I don't know, and I hate to be the no fun guy on this because I'm generally never this guy. I don't know how sustainable this is.
I agree. So
I don't know, and I asked someone in baseball about this yesterday, and they said the exact same thing. It is so fun to watch. It is electric. He is great. He's a lot of fun as a player too, right? And he's huge, and it's great. I don't know how that 6'7", 201-pound body is going to sustain throwing 103 miles an hour as a starting pitcher for a whole season. I just don't think it's going to work out.
Sam, I'll say it. I thought it this weekend. I think he's going to be a closer one day. I think that's the way. I think that's the way it works. I think eventually he winds up being a closer somewhere because I just don't know if the human arm at that size and everything can take it. We got to go. Thank you to our friends Dennis Bernstein and Jerry Bonkowski. Sam, we'll see you all back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.